Hello and welcome to another episode of the SITREP. Today we are discussing vision. What makes your eyesight change? What is cataracts, glaucoma, ocular migraines, and much more. But before I introduce today's guest, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes of the SITREP. Today's guest is an adjunct professor at 4 colleges of optometry, a fellow of the American Academy of Optometry, is the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Medical Optometry, serves as the chief of optometry for VA Boston, and the director of tele-eye care for all VA medical facilities in New England. Doug Rett, thank you so much for coming on the SITREP.
Paul, happy to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Not a problem. I think that that intro, that's the most times I've ever said the word optometry in my life. That's you're a very busy man. That's incredible. But no, seriously, I really greatly appreciate you coming on the podcast to discuss all these different topics that I know a lot of people are very interested about out there. So how about we just jump into it?
Let's do it.
All right. So what is and what causes glaucoma?
Glaucoma, probably the number one condition that we see at the VA, and certainly the number one condition that we're looking for in almost all of our patients. So glaucoma, in a nutshell, is a pressure buildup inside the eyeball. Of course, there's lots of different types of glaucoma. So everything that I'll say today will have this caveat that it's not necessarily like that 100% of the time. Okay. But I think most people can consider glaucoma a pressure building up in the eye. And I like to use the analogy of plumbing. A lot in medicine, and certainly a lot in the eye, is plumbing related, in my opinion. And there's always new fluid being pumped into our eyes and old fluid being pumped out. So there's a drain in our eyes. There's a creation of that fluid, or this tissue where the fluid is being created. And then there's these currents that work by pressure. And the fluid is being created in this part of the eyeball, and then it's circulating over the entire eyeball. And then it's draining out through one of the drains. And glaucoma is a problem with pressure, meaning the fluid is building up in the eye faster than it's draining out. That manifests in someone's vision so slowly that it's really hard for them to notice it. It's one of the reasons why we're always looking for glaucoma in patients, even if they don't come in and say, like, Doc, I think I have glaucoma, because it's usually asymptomatic until the very end. And the symptoms that people will start to see are blind spots in their vision. You can lose your vision in a lot of different ways, but in glaucoma, you lose it typically from the outside in, and you start to get tunnel vision. And it does it in certain sections or quadrants of your eye. It's almost like losing pixels on a TV screen, right? It's a nice TV screen right there, and you can lose a lot of pixels on that TV screen and still have a relatively clear image, right? But then once you start to lose a little bit too many pixels, you have a blind spot. And so in glaucoma, you start to have tunnel vision. You start to get these blind spots. Those blind spots add up together to manifest a real and serious difficulty. And that's when we start to pull the trigger and call it glaucoma. So it's a pressure buildup inside the eye, squeezes down on the optic nerve and damages it. And that damage to the optic nerve manifests by blind spots in your peripheral vision. And people don't notice it unless we catch it. People don't notice it until the end when it's a tunnel vision and it's too late.
Now, how do you catch it?
You catch it with mostly 3 tests. One, you check people's pressure in the eye, and that's the infamous puff test. That's really not done much anymore, but you've probably had that done before. You go to the eye doctor, you sit in front of this machine, and you wait, and you flinch, and you wait, and then puff, right in your cornea. And then good luck getting the other eye because the patient knows what's coming. But there's better tests nowadays to check people's pressure, and you can go to your eye doctor and be relatively reassured that if you don't like the puff test, there's other ways of checking your pressure. People's pressure typically runs in a certain range, and that number is usually between like 12 and 18, this unit that people have a normal pressure. If your pressure is too low, maybe that's one problem, and if your pressure is too high, maybe that's another. And that other thing is typically glaucoma. So what do we check? How do we check for glaucoma? We measure the person's pressure. Say that's high. We're starting to worry a little bit. we'll go on to the next test, and we'll dilate your pupils, and we'll look at your optic nerve. The optic nerve looks different in every human being. It's funny that every part of medicine is like this, really. In whatever specialty you have, that organ or that specific condition that you deal with manifests a little bit different in this human than in that human. And that's what makes medicine kind of an art also, is you have to know what's within the realm of normal, even though this optic nerve doesn't look exactly like the textbook says it's supposed to. So if the pressure's high, we'll go on to the next thing, and that's looking at someone's optic nerve. If you're a big guy, you usually have a big optic nerve. If you're a small, petite person, sometimes you can have a small optic nerve. Certain races have larger nerves than others. There's lots of variations that affect the way someone's optic nerve looks like, but we'll just look at it, and we'll examine it, and we'll grade it on a scale of, say, 1 to 10, 10 being the worst, in a term that we call cupping. And so we'll look at someone's optic nerve, and we'll look to see how big we think their cup is. And we'll give it a number. Every time you come in and every time you get an eye exam, you'll get your pressure checked, and you'll get your optic nerve assessed, and you'll get a term, cupping term applied to your optic nerve, and that term will have a number to it. And so I'll say, Paul, just gave you an eye exam. The pressure in your eyes are 18 in each eye, and your cup of your optic nerve is 0.3. And I put that on your medical record, and I see you again in a year. And then I see you again a year later, and a year after that. And then maybe 10 years from now, I see you, and I look at your optic nerves, and I say, Paul, your cup is 0.7 today, and 1.0 is complete end-stage glaucoma, right? And in the year 2023, I said your cupping was 0.3, and now I'm looking at it, and it's a 0.7, and I'm worried that it's changing. Everyone's optic nerve looks a little bit different, like I said earlier, but what it shouldn't do is change too dramatically over the years. And so those are two of the variables that we look at, the pressure and the way the person's optic nerve looks, to check for change over time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense to me.
The third thing you asked me, the third thing that we check for is that peripheral vision test to check for blind spots, right? Because oftentimes someone will come in and they'll read the 20/20 line, but maybe they have a big blind spot off to the side, right? You can do a peripheral vision test to check someone's visual field, and it's kind of an interesting test. I don't know if you've ever done it before, but you stick your head in this bowl, they patch one eye at a time, and you got to stare straight ahead. And then while you stare straight ahead, you have a clicker, and we present stimuli out here, up, down, left, right, and you click the button whenever you see a flash of light. Some of those lights are very obvious, and anyone can see them, and some are super small and subtle, and you got to have very good eyes or no burned out pixels to be able to see those lights. So those are the three things in glaucoma that we're looking for. What's your pressure? Does your optic nerve look damaged? And is he starting to lose any spots in his peripheral vision? We test that with the visual field.
Hey folks, connecting with your benefits is our primary mission, and theSITREP is providing more options than ever.
Subscribe to our free email newsletter, subscribe to our audio podcast channel, or subscribe to our content on YouTube.
For details and links, check out the description below.